We're Christine and Colin Poole, and we're delighted to be at Lightbox Expo Online 2021. This is a very exciting panel for us, where it's just an open format where you can ask questions and find out what you really want to know. We are delighted with all of our panelists, and we think they don't need any introductions, but just in case they do, we are going to have them each say just a few words about who they are and what they do, and a little bit about their experience before we open the panel for questions. And did you need to add anything to that?
No, I think what we're looking at is some of the greatest talent that's alive today. And for all of those people who've been living in a cave, they'll do a quick introduction. Craig, jump in.
My name is Craig Elliott, and I am a production designer and development artist, mostly for animation, but I also illustrate digitally and like 2D, and I'm a sculptor and jewelry designer. So I do a lot of different things, and I've done conventions as well with some of these guys as well. Yeah.
And Alan?
My name's Alan Williams, and I do a lot of drawing and painting. I do a lot of concept work for film and some game. Recently, I've been doing a lot of book illustration as well. I do some 3D work and 2D work for concepting for various movies and TV shows. And I've also done conventions, and I do a few galleries a year. I got to get a couple of gallery shows coming up in next year. And that's about it.
Great. Hardly, but sorry.
Why not?
Okay, and Vaughn?
Hi everyone, I'm Timothy Von Ridden, better known as Von Art Online. I'm a pencil fantasy illustrator, I would say, and I am currently back on the road for conventions again after a 1.5 year kind of departure. So that's what, well, depending on how things go, we'll see, but that's currently what I'm doing.
Excellent.
Cool. Howard?
My name is Howard Lyon. Most of my career, I've been a freelance illustrator, but in the past few years, I've kind of switched to do more gallery work and more commissions, and kind of moving more into the fine art world.
Excellent. And we are Christine and Colin Poole. We're both sculptors. We frequently collaborate on sculptures with each other. And Colin is also a painter. I am not. We work with galleries. We do a lot of work with Beautiful Bizarre Magazine. Colin has done a ton of corporate commission work. We've done a fair number of commissioned large monuments, small scale bronze type stuff. So we have experience a little bit across a swath like that. We're gonna just start with a quick question for everybody. That is, what is the best thing that you have learned that has helped you survive as an artist and thrive? Best thing you've learned.
Oh, Howard has the answer on the tip of his tongue. He's the one looking
Out there. I'll throw my answer out there. I think one of the things that has helped me the most is having consistency in my schedule. I think early on my perception is that I would get inspiration, and I would jump in and I would work while I was inspired. But I feel like I started to find more development and success when I had a consistent schedule, and found that inspiration would come to me after I'd put in a lot of the work. I think it might have been Norman Rockwell that said inspiration comes after perspiration. I probably am botching that quote, I don't know, but that consistency of schedule. And so I try and get into my studio at the same time each day and start working and maintain that schedule. And I've found that I feel like that's where a lot of my development has come from.
Craig?
Yeah, I mean, something popped into my mind. Something that I learned early on at Disney, like when I was working on Hercules, like 96-ish, that like coming out of school, like I always felt like it was all about like my work and my ideas and what I was bringing to it. And I quickly realized that listening to the directors and listening to the producers or my boss or whatever, and getting information out of them was really key to success in whatever I was doing for the studio, because they were the ones that were, all the work is going through them, and they need to have their ideas on board, and you know, even if it is your idea, you have to sell it. And, you know, communicating with those people was really quickly, like, I realized that's a key part of it. And it still is to this day. Like, you know, yeah, I'm production designer. So now I'm talking to like heads of studios or executive producers, but it's still, you know, those people that are in charge that, you know, working with them, and whether, even if it's like, you know, working for Magic, like, you know, what does the art director need, and what are they looking for out of this card or illustration or whatever. So yeah, that was a big lesson for me that really helped.
Lon?
Something that came to my mind was something that was told to me when I was just getting started, was to fail often and fail forward. And the idea that you put yourself into situations where you're trying new things and you're not sure if it'll work or not, but half of the time it probably won't, but the other half it will. And the more that you can filter out what doesn't work for you over the years, the more you can find what does. And I know that's definitely helped me find my own success over the years, for sure.
Huh. Alan?
I would say for me, it would be look for that thing that you do that is just you, and like kind of live in that space when you start working. And, you know, you learn all these different techniques that are very generalized, you know, to teach you basics about different foundational things. But it's kind of like where you start to break those techniques is where you start to become like your own individual, you know, your style starts to show through. And the other thing would probably be not to wait for somebody to give you permission to do the work that you want to do. Like not wait for somebody to contract you for it or commission it. Just do it, do the work you want to do and take it as far as you possibly can without regard to what the payback is going to be on it, just to get the work out there, just to get the work that you want to do into the world.
You know, if I was answering it, express your personal voice.
Yeah.
It is absolutely, it's the core of everything, and it's critical.
First question is from Crystal, and it's: thanks so much for being here. How can an artist just barely squeaking by to pay bills also learn new things, for example, sculpture, when it seems so expensive to take classes, find space, or get materials?
I'm going to jump in really quick on that one. A lot of this is available free online. And some of the greatest teachers are out there throughout the world, are sharing their knowledge. I don't think you necessarily need to be in a brick and mortar building on a budget in order to learn what you need to learn. Most people I know who are at a high level of accomplishment and talent share what they have.
Yeah, and I would add to that that if you're interested in sculpture, you know, certainly some processes and materials are quite expensive, but just to get the feel of it, you can buy a 25-pound block of water-based clay for about $15. And that is the most beautiful material to play with. And, you know, before you try to sort it all out, where am I going to get a kiln? Where am I going to fire? How am I going to finish this thing? Just get the material and play with it and see what you come up with and see what you like. And if you come up with something brilliant, you'll figure out a way to fire it, or you'll call us and we'll help you.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Anybody else want to jump in?
Yeah, I thought the same thing, you know, just that there's so much online. And, you know, it feels like, I think almost every, you know, well-known, proficient, professional artist has at least something that's available for you to, like, if, you know, you could nibble at 50 great artists and learn a ton. You don't have to take their full class, you know, here or there, or maybe that's your sampler. Maybe you find that, oh shoot, like this little video that Alan did, like that totally speaks to me. And the thing that Craig did is just annoying and I don't want to look at the video. So you go buy Alan's thing after that, you know, and just ignore me, or vice versa.
You block Craig.
Yeah, you know, so you can, there's so much out there that you can sample, and then, you know, go with your, you know, use the force, you know, go with what feels right to you and then follow that direction.
Does anybody else have something to add to that?
I was just going to say it helps if you're starting something new, if you're in the middle of, like, if you don't, like, I still draw on trash, you know, those the paper grocery bags that you get or used to get. That's kind of I used to love to draw on that, and I still do. And those are free. So when I'm talking about like getting into something like sculpting, which obviously you guys know way more about than I do, for me, it's about building tiny habits first. Like just play with it 5 or 10 minutes a day. Just build those little tiny habits of touching it. Because I think it's less about the fact that, for me, it was less about the fact that because like you say, clay doesn't cost a lot of money for just a nice block. It's about overcoming the inertia of spending the time doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's just do those, you know, make those little habits, like 5 or 10 minutes a day. You know, when you're doing something else, sit down and play with it, and learn to play with it before you have to learn to work with it. You know,
I would agree. You know, it's something. Great materials are wonderful, but they don't make a great artist. It's more a matter of playing. And like kid goes out to the beach and plays in the sand, and he doesn't go out to the beach and go, you know, it's kind of the wrong sand. I don't like the consistency. It's wet.
I don't know how you use this thing.
I wonder if I could order some of this from overseas.
Yeah, it's more about breaking that invisible barrier of just getting in there and doing stuff than, oh, this has to be the perfect way, this has to be the perfect tool, or yeah,
and it seems that once you commit and start doing something, all kinds of doors open for you that you could have never envisioned before. You'll be like, oh my God, how did that happen? Well, it's just because you started doing it, and I think you start putting that out in the world that this is part of who you are, and it's gonna happen.
Yeah,
that's what I've always found anyway.
I think it's hard to be patient sometimes with the things that we want to do. I've not met an art medium that I haven't wanted to utilize in some way. Like, I want to do everything. It can be hard to be patient and want the space and want the money and time and materials to do it. I think that Alan's advice is great. You know, if all you can do is 15 minutes with some cheap materials, then do it. But try not to stress about what you can't do and what you don't have, and utilize what you do have and what you can do right now, and develop expertise in it. Right.
It's really hard sometimes to be really good at one thing and then to go and suck at another thing in the same day. But it's kind of really worthwhile though too, because you get to feel that beginner's mind again.
Yeah.
And that's that's kind of a touchback to your youth, right?
I imagine we've all experienced that to some degree. I found for myself, I started out with water-based media, and switching to oils, oh, it was a train wreck. You know, you think you're doing fairly well, and then you start something new, and so part of that is cutting yourself a break, realizing there's going to be a learning curve, and it might be a long learning curve, but just enjoying the process of it.
Yeah, you can't attach your ego to the failure of, you know, just working in some new medium. Like, they're not the same thing.
I'm going to introduce the second question, and we're going to start with Vaughn.
Yeah. Oh.
It is, most of you started out without social media. I think that means we're old. Do you use it now, and do you find it helpful to promote your work and keep you in front of art directors? Take it away, Vaughn.
Okay. That's funny. When I was in school, there was no Instagram, but there was, I remember, DeviantArt, and that was like our social media at the time. It was that G-Hub. And yeah, I really focused a lot of energy into that. And then when Facebook kind of created their own, art pages for everyone, I created that and I put a lot of time and energy into that. And I've now since put it into Instagram, obviously, but as we're seeing it change and it grow and to evolve into other platforms, I think the big lesson I've learned is to be very adaptive with new media. And it can be very difficult, especially when you get so fixated on one. And even though I feel fairly confident with Instagram with certain things, I definitely don't feel confident with like TikTok or some of these new ones that are coming around. And I think to stay relevant to some of the younger eyes, I think it is important to put yourself on these platforms, but it can be very difficult. And I feel really bad. I talk to a lot of artists about this all the time. I feel bad for younger artists because if you're like 16 or 17 and you feel obligated to join like Instagram, and unfortunately, you now dictate the quality of your art by likes and comments and how many followers you have. And I think it's really skewed how art is perceived nowadays. And I wish younger artists would focus more on the fundamentals and foundations before they focus on creating like an established platform that they can then create a business off of. Because I do think you can, like for myself, I definitely am able to serve financial stability through Instagram primarily. And conventions have been kind of now the icing on the cake, but I wish younger artists wouldn't focus so much on it as they seem to. And I even see it more prevalent with the quality of what they create. Everything seems to be very square format now, and very like zoomed in, very much like a profile, just flowy hair. And I don't mean to, I know art's subjective, but I feel like a lot of time art feels more hollow because of Instagram and social media. And I think going to what you guys were saying early, like going to the core of who you are as an artist and expressing that should be your primary concern. And then kind of attacking social media should be like the second or third one, to be honest.
An interesting point that the format of an Instagram post is driving, and size is driving what the art is and how it's cropped. And, you know, it's like a big oil painting is not the same on Instagram as to, you know, standing in front of it, like that you just can't get that experience. Yeah, very good point.
Adding on to that is, isn't that the pitfall of the art market, regardless of the platform, whether it's galleries, whatever it is, you have to be careful about what's popular versus what is your voice. And that's easy to get sucked into. Well, you know, people like puppies, I'll paint puppies, regardless of whether you like puppies.
I've never had that ability. I've had things that I've done in the past that have been like a piece or two that have been popular, and then tried to do a series, but it always feels very repetitive to me. And I can't do it because I feel like the only way I can do that is if I do another piece in the series, but don't think of it as part of the series and just fall in love with the reason why I did the piece to begin with. Right? I'm not saying that it's bad for people to do series work. And to, you know, sometimes that's how you get, there's an emotional currency to people liking your work, right? So it has a weight that is sometimes equal to money. So if that's how you get what you get out of your artwork is by people liking it online, there's nothing wrong with that, right? But what happens, like you say, is that people tend to tailor what they do to what is liked. It can get you into a lot of trouble because you start to feel hollow, like Tim said. You know, if you let that go on too long without digging into what it was that you wanted to do originally.
What do you think about the future of traditional work / traditional mediums? I love painting, but I sometimes feel that I'm lagging behind and feeling like I have to work with digital, even though I don't like it very much.
I don't think you have to work with digital. I mean, you know, there are probably some, I mean, since I work in studios a lot, it's a little harder to get a job, say a Disney feature where I'm working now, and only say draw. There are some people who do that. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but like studio work is often, I mean, in studio, not like freelance for a studio, is often more bent towards digital, but there are so many things that you can do. And I think because of digital, traditional is rarer and in a sense more valuable these days. So I don't feel like you have to be stuck necessarily.
I started my career thinking I would just be a traditional artist. And then I got hired at a video game company and was comfortable with digital tools and started using digital tools and learning 3D and learned Softimage and 3D Studio Max and a lot of the programs. And then in about 2009, my love for what I was doing digitally started to diminish. And not because there's anything wrong with digital tools, but I just wasn't having that fulfillment. And so I switched to working traditionally. And it was a bit of a transition, but you know, initially I worked like 3 times slower than I did when I worked digitally. But I found I could then sell the originals, and that compensated for the slowdown in productivity. And now I'm back to being about as fast working traditionally as I was working digitally. And I've started to re-embrace my digital skill set and apply it to my traditional work. Whereas when I first kind of made that break, I thought, well, I'm not working digitally, and so I'm not going to use those tools in the same way. And that was stupid. I don't know why I did that, because having access to all the tools is clearly the best approach, rather than just limiting yourself artificially or arbitrarily to one set of tools. And so now I really embrace, and I do fairly elaborate digital comps for my paintings before I start on them traditionally. And I feel like that has sped up my work to utilize both. But to the original question, and to support what Craig said, it doesn't matter, and don't put an artificial pressure on yourself to be digital or be traditional. If you enjoy one more than the other, then use it and do your very best work. They're just tools, but don't artificially limit what tools you're going to use for some weird reason,
I would have to say that I agree with everything that you just said. I work both digitally and traditionally. In the concept work that I do, I get asked for pencil as much as I do anything else. In fact, it's rare that they ask me to do anything but the pencil work, except for the few times that I've done some 3D sculpting. But I actually started off traditional, then I went digital for a few years, and then I went back to traditional for my personal work and used digital for my contract work. And now I use digital like Howard does, where I do a lot of the study of the traditional piece in a digital format, because it's pretty fast. Like, if I want to sculpt something, I can do a maquette in ZBrush, in a few hours, rather than have to do it physically and and then have to manage it. But I feel like it's just it does boil down to just you have to do what the thing is that you like to do the most. And if you're going to work traditionally, you may bump into somebody that has that needs a digital requirement that you either have to address or overcome the obstacle. But it's just I think it does boil down to finding what you have an affinity for, and maximizing that is more important than like you say, arbitrarily deciding that or feeling a pressure that you need to work one way or the other.
I feel like I know where this person's coming from with this question, especially in the context of conventions. I mean, you go to one and it's all digital, it's mostly fan art, and you assume that that's what you have to do to make it in that specific industry. And we were talking about this before the thing started, but when I met Alan and seeing just a pure pencil traditional booth and seeing him do well and being introduced to his recognition and his mastery, it changed my whole perception of what it was. So I think a lot of these preconceived notions about traditional work not being as favored as digital, I think we create these limitations in our head based on what we see. And I know, at least in the convention space, I mean, traditional definitely seems to be the more popular movement now, because digital seems to be so saturated that by being traditional, you actually stand out in contrast. So that's just been my experience doing pretty much, all traditional nowadays.
To that, what you were just talking about with people making decisions based on money, I'm going to skip to one question where it was asked, what streams of income have worked for you, and can you say why? Because that may be the source of some of the other questions.
I tend to work about 3 or 4 months out of the year in film work, and then the rest of the year is all my personal work and online and preparing for gallery shows, or just sometimes I'll have a narrative project, like I'll do like book publishing, where I'll have like a cover or interior illustrations. Like I did some, like I Am Legend, did the interior illustrations for something like that. But yeah, I mean, early on, we did like all kinds of shows across the country. We would go to every art show we could get to, or mail to every art show we could get to. And we even went to Renaissance fairs, and set up there. It doesn't hurt, you just got to find the thing that you feel, comfortable with and do it. Like, I like working a few months out of the year in film because it's like real intense, and it's different because I don't really usually have to do finished art for that. I can just go through ideas like crazy. And I find that often fuels my personal work for the rest of the year too, because in reaction to being given this tight brief for film, I'll just go off in weird directions on my own, for my own work. So.
Well, I've had a whole bunch of different ones. You know, it just depends. Like, because I work mostly for the film industry, it's like, well, it didn't used to be like this. When I first started at Disney, it was like a contract, like that you got to stay at Disney for, I think my first contract was like 7 years. And then I had a contract at DreamWorks for 3 or 4. But after DreamWorks, that was around 2003, even animation studios started going project to project for the most part. There are still people that stay there, but it's become much more the case that, and Alan can speak to this too, that you work on a movie for a year or 2 or 4 years, depending, you know, what the production schedule is. And then like you're off on your own. Like sometimes they try to find you something else, but usually not. So I'm often finding like I have to pour all my energy into a film for 2 years, and then all of a sudden I have to scramble and reach out and contact people to do some trading cards and to do some like fine art pieces. And it's kind of this like, or do some jewelry commissions or whatever it is. I've even done like, you know, blacksmithing work for people who have like decorative ironwork and fences and stuff around where I live, you know, just to like kind of do something in between, which actually gives a lot of nice variety. So, you know, and that's kind of the spackle between the bricks for me. I think everyone here has a different way of working though. So I just wanted to kind of say what mine was.
Yeah.
Ron or Howard, either one want to jump in?
I know I had a conversation with a Lyft driver at a convention, and he was giving me a lot of advice about financial stuff. And he says that you should have 5 sources of income. And he said the thumb should be your biggest. And as we were like having this back and forth, I realized for myself, it would be conventions and then Etsy, Patreon, YouTube, and then commissions. And he said the reason you want 5 is so that it's like a table. So if one leg gives out, you still have 4 to support you. And that stuck with me. And this was like a 5-year ago conversation. I still think about that all the time. So I try to keep those, you know, running my business.
I agree with what Vaughn just said, and it took me a while in my professional career to think that way and try and figure that out. And I had a friend tell me, like, try and find ways to monetize things that you're already doing. Mm-hmm. And that was good advice. So where that is manifest for me is I enjoy doing fairly elaborate photo shoots for some of my paintings, you know, hiring the model, getting the costume, the lighting, all of that. And I'd shoot a couple hundred pictures for a painting. And I thought, well, if I just keep shooting in different poses, maybe other artists will find this useful too. And so I started making photo reference packs for people to download. And I've been recording my painting process for a while and making time lapses, and then started narrating over those, and was like, well, I might as well do a Patreon and have a Gumroad for those. But then I also do prints and conventions and commissions and sell originals. And like Vaughn said, I try and kind of diversify those income streams, because like COVID hit and the convention money completely died. But the Patreon and Gumroad money increased. Mm-hmm. And so it was nice to have that diversity in the things that I was relying on for income.
Yeah, I think we fall into the exact same categories, and we're all in the same place. We're having being able to pivot, having more legs, like your Lyft driver was saying. Mm-hmm. It is critical to it because invariably things have high points and sweet spots, and they might go for years or decades, but also they can evaporate overnight. Like the conventions. Sometimes you put work in a gallery and you're nothing but a hero. And then the gallery closes its doors. You need to be sort of prepared for the other things. And the more that you can delve into, the more directions you can go in, help stabilize the income so that you actually can create an income that's far more stable than most people assume their income is. Most people think, well, you know, I go to the bank and I get I've got my 9 to 5. But if the bank closes or they get canned, they've got nothing. Here, if 1 or 2 or 3 of your income streams slow down or evaporate, you've got other things, other ways to go.
I'd also recommend that we talk a lot about playing on multiple playgrounds. And first of all, it's really fun because you get to interact with people from these different genres. So you have the imaginative realism and, ceramics and, like traditional sculpture for us, all of these different groups that we play with. But it also diversifies the people that get to see your work that might be interested in purchasing it or commissioning something. So if all I was doing was relying on the people that go to conventions, I might have been in more trouble, but there are other playgrounds that our work appeals to. And so we try to keep reaching out to new people and interacting and just seeing, what we can create. And usually when we're doing that, we're always looking for that. What can we help you create? We're not ever looking for what can we get from you. So I think that's a good way to approach creating diverse streams of income.
Actually, quickly to add to that though, I think it's very difficult to navigate in the modern age, like what will be your thing. And I think advice for young artists would be to not force one that doesn't feel natural to you. Because I know a lot of my friends are like, especially through COVID, try to become more like TikTok known or YouTube known, but they just aren't the personality for that format. So, test all of them and not just force one because that's the one you think you have to do.
Absolutely.
That's a great point. There are some absolutely incredible artists, say at Disney, that nobody has ever heard of. And if people saw their work, their heads would explode, but they just don't care. It's not who they are. They love Disney. They love making Disney movies and they're incredible at it. And that's okay. Like they make good money and, you don't have to be known necessarily to do this.
Great point.
But it's what tools do each of you use to achieve your yearly creative goals, and how much flexibility do you realistically factor into those timelines?
I don't have yearly creative goals. Mine is more of a piece by piece basis. I don't make goals for a year. That's a really difficult because it doesn't really apply to what I do. I tend to just work on what I want to work on as I want to work on it. I know that maybe sound a bit like I've always been that way, and it's actually gotten in the way sometimes of making more money. because I do tend to just kind of follow my nose and play with the things that I'm led to play with. If I guess I should let somebody else answer if they really want a good answer for that.
I could say that like for me, some of the planning comes in not taking the first job. For me, since I'd be working on a film for a few years, I try to I think about interviews as much me interviewing them as them interviewing me, and plus these people I'm going to be working with them for a couple years, so they have to not be crazy, or at least sort of insane is okay, and like so the project has to be something that I think I'm going to enjoy for this amount of time. The kind of work that I'm going to do also has to be enjoyable for that amount of time. Like there's stuff that I used to do that I can totally do, like I can do 3D layout for films or previs or whatever, but I just don't like doing that anymore. It was never, it was kind of fun at first, but then that's not something I want to go back and do. Somebody like Netflix just offered me a job doing that. And I'm like, I'll just wait, for the right thing. So I think for me that a lot of it depends on picking the right thing, like, not jumping at like, oh, I need money, I'm gonna like, I gotta take this job now and it's from a big studio or whatever. Wait for something that works for you, and even works for like time wise. Like sometimes projects are short or long. Yeah.
I think getting to that point where you learn to say no to some projects is really powerful and really important to your personal success and fulfillment as an artist. And that's still something that I struggle with. I want to say yes to about everything that comes across my inbox. But as I've gotten better about that, it's very empowering. And I've found that that it always pays off. Like the the better thing is often right behind that email that I almost said yes to, you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know there's a quote from Miles Johnson that I keep on my wall, and it's, you overestimate what you can do in a day and underestimate what you can do in a year. And I like that because I think so often we try to put a lot of effort into what we're doing today, and we might feel like a failure if we didn't hit those certain goals. So something I like to do, because I'm a very methodical person, like for instance, I'm creating a tarot deck right now, and I try to create one card every month. So I have a timer on my desk that's like one of those wind up, and it'll be for an hour, because I believe you can do anything for an hour without like getting stressed out. So for 1 hour a day, I'll do the tarot, just the tarot drawing, and I'll focus on it. And then when that timer's up, I can move on. I can do something else. And then I know, okay, that's like 30 hours a month on just one card. I should be able to finish one card in that 30 hours.
Okay, so this is from Oscar. I want to know, how do you get recognition and connections in the industry living outside of the US?
Saying the industry is a pretty broad thing. I mean, each of us kind of work in like little niches, and there's some overlap between us, but you know, I would say each sort of industry that needs artwork has its own, you know, hooks and things like that. And I have a lot of mentees that are from different countries, like Costa Rica, Poland, like Japan, and their successes have come most often from networking, like knowing people. And so how do you network? Okay, well, you can use social media to network. It's really about talking to people. You know, Alan and I used to have a booth right across from each other at Comic-Con for, I don't know, 10 years, was it?
Yeah.
And we would send each other, you know, we'd run over and say, oh, this person just showed up here. Like, I think they went around the corner, go talk to them. Like, I think they'd be perfect for you. Or it's like this, and it's this ball that gets bigger and bigger and collects more moss as you go. And most of the jobs that I get are from people that I know. It's rarer that someone will come in from left field. And this may not be the case with you guys, but especially like when I say industry, I think like film industry for me. You know, it's people that I've worked with before, or people who know people that I've worked with. You know, like there's this diaspora of like Disney artists from that chunk of time that I was there for 7 years, from like Hercules to Chicken Little. And they're all at like such a huge variety of studios now. And I'll get a call from one of them like a couple times a year, different people. And, you know, they'll just say, hey, like, are you available? Like what? Because they remember me, they remember my work, they remember, you know, going to lunch with me, talking to me, whatever it is. And so it really comes down a lot to the people. You can send your portfolio to the Netflix website. It's pretty anonymous. You know, you're being filtered often through people who recruiters who, you know, maybe for the most part, not all, have like business degrees or communication degrees. So they don't have like the eye that talking to an art director or a director would have, and, you know, would pick up on, like Alan was saying earlier, like, you know, talking to Vaughn at, I don't know if it was Dragon Con or whatever, he just saw something, you know, and I think all of us have had that experience, meeting someone at a convention or in person, or seeing their work. Like somebody says, hey, look at my work. We can just tell, like, hey, this person has it. And it's all about, you know, like I said, getting in front of people and talking to people. And
most of the work that I initially got came through, believe it or not, Facebook. I got a lot of film work through Facebook, and then I do work with a lot of the same guys now, the art directors, but I met them because of social media, and they had no idea where I lived at the time, you know. So, you know, and there's obviously the people we met at the conventions. That was pretty, you know, there's been some pretty exciting moments at shows where, you know, somebody would walk by and you get to meet them or whatever. But I think that, you know, in terms of not being in the US, as long as, I mean, you just have to make sure you get the kind of work you want to do onto the platforms that showcase that kind of work. You can submit your work to studios, to, you know, especially like, I guess like you could work for Weta, although it's pretty difficult, you know, I think, to get involved in Weta, you know, especially if you're not going to go and work there, right? But in terms of just getting work out there. The thing that I did that was the most valuable was I just started, like the year that I started doing concept work was when I started putting concept work on the walls at the shows that I went to. I had to show people what I wanted to do and that I could do it before they would hire me to do it. They're not going to look at the narrative illustration that I did before and assume that I can do character or creature concept. So it's just kind of important to tailor, it's what you want to do and then put it on the platforms where that kind of stuff is looked at a lot.
That's great portfolio advice. I worked as an art director in video games for a while, and I was very risk averse. It was a big deal to hire someone, pay for moving costs and bring them in and all of that. And so I didn't want to take a chance on someone. I wanted to know they could do the work. And if they were new to the industry, the key to that was that they were doing work that I could plug into the product that I was doing. And that can be difficult to hear sometimes as you're new and you're struggling to develop your skills and abilities. But like Alan said, he put work on his walls that represented the kind of work that he wanted to be doing, and that paid off. So I just wanted to point that out, that's really good advice. Do the kind of work that you want to get hired to do.
I was just going to say it, and if you're not being paid, this is the time to do the kind of work that is where you go above and beyond what they actually can pay you to do. Do like the best example of the work that you can do, and then figure out how to make that cost effective when they pay you to do it. You know what I mean? Because you might spend 50 hours on a drawing or a painting, and then get paid to do something that they're only going to give you 20 hours to do. So you have to kind of know that, you put your best foot forward, but you have to also tailor that towards the kind of work that you're going to be doing. Like concept art, you very rarely have the time to spend doing a really super, refined, completed piece of art. It's usually just like a spot illustration or just a vignette of some kind. There are people that, do environments too, but I haven't had much experience with that. But yeah, it's always kind of, I think you're right. I think it's always about getting out there what you want them to hire you to do. Because the one problem I used to, and I think a lot of people have said this, is that if I can do this work, you should know that I can do that kind of work. But the problem is that if I wanted to do that kind of work, if I was interested in it, I would be doing that kind of work. And being interested in the work you get hired to do is half of the challenge of doing that kind of work, right? If you're not interested in the work, and like if somebody hired me to, draw or paint like automobiles, I probably could do a fairly refined, but it's about the interest in it. If I'm not that interested in it, I'm not going to put the kind of nuanced observations into it that someone who is interested in it will, and that shows up in the work that you do.
This is from Michelle. She's to everyone. I found a lot of school/courses to be disappointing in terms of knowledge I actually gained. So I'm considering mentorships and one-on-one reviews instead. However, it seems like a lot of artists don't offer them, or they're not similar to the type of art I'm interested in doing. Do you have any recommendations for how to find mentors and connect?
Well, you can ask. I mean, if it like there's not a button on the website doesn't mean that they wouldn't do that for you. I've mentored a lot of people, and it's just because they've asked, like, hey, can you do this for me? And then I can think in my mind, okay, well, I've got like 2 hours a month, or I've got an hour a week or whatever that I could probably plug in, and I come up with a fee that I would charge, and away I go. It's like another commission kind of. At least don't be afraid of doing that.
I think you can also ask about apprenticeships as well. And again, it's that most people probably haven't considered it if they're an individual artist, but if there's somebody you really want to learn with, figure out how to get in touch with them. And that's something I think that goes beyond what a school course could do for you. But if you can, and you absolutely got to pick the person who can, whose work really sings to you, so that you can go, okay, this guy does great, whatever it is, skin tones and norms. And so, I really admire what it is. What would it take to be, and it might be something that is fairly unimpressive, but you're getting into his studio. You're going to make him coffee, and you're going to do the matting and framing or something like that. I did multiple apprenticeships. I did 3 of them. Christine did 1 of them. And it is one way to approach it, where you get just to get to be there, and you learn a lot where they're not actually sitting down going, okay, this is the colors I mixed for that perfect tone. But you're seeing over their shoulder. You're part of the process. And you have to figure out what can you provide to them that makes them think, okay, I'm okay with this intrusion in my studio, because they're going to take care of social media or something like that. They're going to be my assistant. So in a way, you've got to sell yourself to be in their studio and make it work.
You know, to that point, like what you said and what Craig said, it doesn't hurt to ask. I asked James Gurney when I was younger if I could come in be his apprentice and help him in his studio. He said no, but
he said yes to us.
Wow, goodness. It opened up a relationship. And then the next time that I saw Jim in person, there was a conversation to be had. And, you know, he was so nice and so kind about it and talking, but he shared some advice and some input, I viewed it as a great experience and an opportunity to chat just a little bit with someone who I love and admire, you know, for their work. And so it definitely doesn't hurt to ask. And sometimes that can lead to a connection that will be meaningful.
I was going to say, I feel like you can learn a lot just through observation as well. I mean, I knew I was definitely a quiet kid growing up, and especially even at conventions, I never wanted to bother like artists that I looked up to. But then I would always just look at what they were doing. And it might be something as simple as going to their YouTube and seeing how they shade or how they attack a certain part of drawing. And I feel like I could observantly look at what they're doing, how they're doing it, and then break it down so that I could try to do it myself. And I think you can apply that then to also their career choices. And then definitely as I get older, how they treat people, how they treat others has been a big learning thing. And that's all been through observation. So I feel like I have a lot of unofficial mentors, but they've given me so much knowledge without even really knowing it. I mean, I've watched Alan's, I've seen every YouTube video at least twice.
What are your favorite methods for generating ideas, and what processes do you use to select which ones you go forward with? I'm curious on how each of you work on starting your projects.
I try and focus lately, and this is where I see my work going, a lot more on shape, a lot more on design. And so I try and think of my compositions initially as like black and white designs or black, gray, and white designs. I think it was Frank Benson, an American artist, who said that design is king, and he was an incredible technician. But without good design underneath the painting, it almost doesn't matter how well you can render or you know everything else. You look at Alan's drawings and the silhouette and design of them are so strong, and then he layers in some incredible rendering on top of it. Craig, I was just talking to one of my mentorees, and he was struggling with his design. And I said, are you familiar with Craig Elliott's work? Because his is like pure design that you add some brilliant color and wonderful rendering on top of. But it stands on its own just as shape, just as design. And so when I start a piece, I'm focusing purely on those shapes, and then I move into value and form and color, and lastly, detail.
I know personally I have 3 ways of going about drawing. It's like one where it's just free form and it kind of just grows organically. And then the second one would be it has like a preconceived set, like a tarot card, for instance. There's like a look to the Rider-Waite style that I try to recreate. So it's very structured. And then the third one would be if I have an idea in my head that I want to execute it, I usually do a lot of thumbnails and figure out what composition works best. And it's more of a methodical way, but all 3 they're interchangeable for me. It just depends on how I'm feeling that week.
A lot of it depends on what I'm doing, I would say. You know, if it's just a fine art piece, that's one thing. If it's designing like the look of a movie, that's another thing. Often, I think the one consistent thing I would often say is that I start with ideas that have nothing to do with the thing I'm designing in a way. Like I want to look at electron micrographs of pollen to give me inspiration to design a building, for instance. So that's creativity to me, like taking two things that never existed together and bringing them together and creating something new out of it, rather than looking at architecture first. You know, if I'm designing a building, I kind of like avoid the thing I'm trying to design to be able to bring something new to it.
That's
I
cool.
love that.
That's great.
I was thinking about what they were saying about how do you pick the direction when you've got multiple directions to go in. And for myself, I find I'm often go down multiple paths at once. And then it's a matter of, you know, you set the groundwork for, let's say, 3 directions, and it's getting up in the morning and which one really just jumps at you, which one that you have no hesitations about, and you think, I really want to start with this one. And then you don't question it. You just run down that path.
I play a lot. I like recently I've been drawing on this acrylic primed linen, which I like because it's got like a paper texture to it, but you can go back and forth with erasing on it. But I like spending time on things too. I'm not a person that likes to do quick sketching or, you know, fast painting, or I like spending time with the art and like walking back and forth across the room and looking at it and seeing what sticks out at, you know, like I'll make a lot of different shapes and see what patterns form in my psychology when I look at it, doing the Rorschach kind of thing. And so I do a lot of what I do is exploratory. Like I'll do compositional things that are more formal for things like book narrative and for concept art when they need to have more of a process that they can approve each step. But for myself, I just almost always, I'll have a flash of an idea. And I realize when I have this flash of an idea that what I'm trying to draw is the feeling that I had from the flash of an idea, because there really wasn't a whole lot of lines laid out in my head. So I have to figure out how to recreate that feeling that I had in this idea on the board. And usually that's searching for me. I like to explore a lot and play with shapes. So sometimes that's usually like I'll draw, like I'll stick my pencil on the end of a metal tube that's like 3 feet long and draw from, 2 or 3 feet away just to get some gestural shapes and stuff. And then I'll go back and forth with that. So I don't really put any limitations on it, on how to, to come to the idea. Sometimes I look at everything I've done and I'll find an old piece that had an element that I played with in an older piece that I want to maximize and make the focus of a new piece, which, I guess that's how series work happens.
In terms of generating ideas, for me, I think it's maintaining a sense of curiosity. And this ties into what Craig was saying, where nothing is off limits. If it's electron microscope pictures or, whatever's going on in the medical field, I'm interested. I want to know about it. And then my favorite method is honestly going for a jog or taking the dogs out for a walk. Because I find when I'm walking, I don't specifically say, I must figure out what this piece is going to be. There's just all this information, and I just kind of let my mind wander. And invariably, I'm going to see an image in there of what the next piece is going to be. And then when we work with models, we oftentimes just let them move, and sometimes we'll give them cues that send them in directions that we like. And I oftentimes for sculpture will put myself, like if I want this sculpture to feel uncomfortable, I'll actually go into that position and be like, okay, yeah, that's in the right direction. And if I put myself in that position and I feel relaxed and calm, and that's what the sculpture wants to be, it's like method sculpting, where I'm actually just trying to feel what that particular pose generates for me. So for me, I think a way of generating ideas is just to allow my mind to relax and wander, and by itself integrate these kinds of things into something I wouldn't have thought of if I was really trying to force myself to do something.
Feed and nurture your curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any questions you guys want to ask each other?
Oh, so many.
Shoot, go for it.
Oh gosh, no, on the spot, no, I can't think of any. Actually, no, you know what? I am curious, because I know we joked about this before, but what would you tell your younger self that you wish you would have known sooner?
It's a roller coaster. Put your hands on your head and
a lot of the stuff I think that we've talked about for me are things that I would have liked to have known. I mean, I know if I think about the things that I've said in this lecture or this panel, those are all things that, like, you know, the thing that I learned when I was at Disney, like listening to what the director wants, and like, you know, that thing, and all the other things that we've talked about are all things that I'd like to my younger self to know for sure. And maybe, you know, maybe foremost is to, like, you know, as Alan has said many times in this panel, just follow that thing that's inside you, that the thing that you gotta do is the thing that you're supposed to do. And trust that, don't push that aside because you see a whole bunch of this other stuff and you think that that's what art is.
Yeah, I think early on, choosing this as a career can be a struggle. You know, some of the questions that have been asked kind of been along those lines, some worry of how am I going to network, how am I going to find studio space and have the money for materials and all of those things. And those are all really valid concerns. You know, I mean, that's a reality that we all face, and that I certainly did when I was earlier in my career. But I would just say to my younger self, this is the greatest job in the world that I have. Like, I can't imagine doing something else. It's so rewarding and so fun, that whatever you're having to do to get to where you want to be, it's worth it, because this is what you want to do. And so, you know, figure out how to make it work. And it's probably a different menu, you know, a different plan or schedule for everyone, you know, just it's hard to prescribe how you would get there, because it's going to be a different path for everyone. But it's such a privilege and a wonderful blessing in my life to be an artist. And most artists that I talk to express that same thing. It's so fun to do it. So persist and persevere, because you have such a fun future ahead of you. This is me talking to my younger self. And then I would play back this whole video with everyone else's comments to my younger self.
I would tell myself to be patient with myself. You know what I mean? To know that nothing that I want to do is going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
And that I should, when I say give myself time to do something, means I will take all the time I need to learn how to do it, and not put a time limit on my goals. You know?
I like that.
I think I would tell myself, I promise you, everything is going to be all right. You know, this part of your soul, that this is who you are, and you're going to figure it out, whatever it takes.
Vaughn, you are your younger self, but your younger self.
Oh boy. Oh, I would tell myself not to put your pencils in your pocket facing up. I could save myself so many headaches with lead under my fingernails. So yeah, that'd be the number one.
You guys have been absolutely terrific. We're so grateful that you joined us. And you know, bravo to you all for bringing your A game.
Thanks for hosting it. Thanks for
thank you.
Bye,
guys.
everybody.
Hey,
Dude,
don't go away. We have a panel. Where are you going?
Tell me the about.
That's the only studio I haven't worked for, I think.
Normally that question is, and we're going to start in about 30 seconds. What would you tell your younger self? But since Vaughn is still young.
so I think we'll just say, what would you tell Vaughn?
Yeah.